Hey guys, okay, let's talk about 4.2 complex numbers. So a complex number is any number written in the form a plus bi, where a and b are real numbers, and I is the imaginary number. So I, we call imaginary because it equals the square root of -1. You can't take the square root of a negative, can you? So that's why in math, we've assigned a variable to the square root of -1. It's I. And it's just used to solve problems that include square roots of -1 so that you can kind of get past that. So when adding or subtracting complex numbers, you're going to treat I just like any other variable. So here's an example. We've got 17 minus 6i minus 9 plus 10i. Remember that when you've got a minus sign out here, we distribute that negative sign, right? So that negative goes to the 9 and that negative goes to the 10. So we've got minus 9 and minus 10i. So since we're treating I just like any other variable, we're going to combine our like terms, right? And in this case, our like terms are -6i and -10i. Okay, so 17 minus 9 is 8. And -6i minus 10i is minus 16i. There we go. So when adding or subtracting complex numbers, you treat I just like any other variable, like it's x, and you combine your like terms, and that's it, you're done. So when multiplying complex numbers, very similar, right? We're going to do something very similar. Oh, here, this example is just another example, but adding, which is even simpler than subtracting because you don't worry about distributing the negative. So we've got 16 plus 17i plus -8 minus 18. So I went ahead, when I wrote them, I wrote the like terms together. Here's our numbers. Here's our terms with the variables. 16 minus 8 is 8. 17i minus 12i is 5i. So I think you guys are not going to have any problem with adding or subtracting. Let's talk about multiplying. Same deal, right? It's very similar. We're going to treat I like any other variable until we kind of get to the end here. So here we've got, we're multiplying two binomials, right? That's FOIL. So first 6 times 3, that gives us 18. Outer 6 times -10i gives us -60i. I is inner, so -5i times 3 gives us -15i. And then L for last, -5i times -10i gives us 50i squared. Okay, we're going to combine like terms, which is in this case is our -60i and our -15i. Remember, so far we've just been treating this I like any other variable. So when we get to this last step here, where we've combined our like terms, and normally with any other variable we'd be done, right? But remember that I equals the square root of -1, right? So if we square that, we've got square root of -1 squared. Well, when we square something under the square root sign, remember these two things are mathematical opposites, like multiplying and dividing. It's like adding and subtracting. Those things are mathematical opposites, right? So taking the square root and squaring something, mathematical opposites. So when we square something that's under the square root, it just disappears, right? It just disappears. So if we've got I squared, then that means it's actually just -1, which is what we've done here. So I squared is actually the square root of -1 squared, which equals -1. So instead of 50i squared, we have 50 times -1, which gives us -50. So now we just do one more step to combine these like terms. 18 and -50 are now like terms because I squared equals -1. So negative 18 and negative 50 gives us negative 32. So our final answer, negative 32 minus 75i. And that I just hangs out there because it's not I squared or anything. It's just, so that's it. Multiplying complex numbers, adding and subtracting complex numbers. You treat I just like any other variable when you're combining your like terms. The only extra step that you take is this last one here. This last one here, when you wind up with an I squared after multiplying, because that I squared is actually negative 1. Okay, I think you guys can handle this. Once again, the homeworks on these are really short. We just kind of wanted to give you a taste of the Algebra 2 stuff and not, inundate you with a bunch of super difficult stuff. If you have any questions, please let me know.